Well, the Generation 2030 series is a series looking at child demographics across the world. And it was born out of 4 years ago, out of trying to understand where children will be living in the 21st century and what will the state and condition of their lives be. The Africa-specific editions are really looking at Africa's children and how they will fare in the 21st century. And we released the first edition 3 years ago when we found out that 1 in every 3 children in Africa and 1 in every 3 children in the world would be African by mid-century. And the latest report reprises those numbers, so it looks at all of the demographic trends, but it also looks at the beneficial effects of having these children and the potential challenges they face. Having more children and having a demographic transition can be a good thing for a continent because it can lead to what we call the demographic dividend. And that's the moment that can happen when, fertility trends trend downwards and the dependent population of both elderly and children becomes smaller. It means that the people who are working constitute a greater part of the population, and hence those who are economically empowered have more say in the economy. They have more money to spend, they have more time to consume because they don't have to look after so many dependents, and they can save and invest. And if they have the right economic model that creates well-paying jobs, then they can get a potential dividend, which means that their incomes will grow, and for many of them, they'll be able to finally leave poverty behind them. There's an opposite thing that is true, though, that if they don't make the necessary investments in human capital to be able to get good jobs, and if the right economic policies to create jobs are not put in place, then the sheer number of people can lead to a demographic burden. It means you have more people with fewer jobs and more dependents to eventually feed. So there are two scenarios for Africa, and we believe that the first one, the dividend, is possible, but only if Africa steps up its investment in children and youth, beginning right now. Well, young people make up almost half of Africa's population, and in about 1/3 of countries, they do make up more than half of the population. Secondly, I think it's important for young people to be involved because it's their future we're talking about. It's not only their right as a right of the child, but it is their lives. If Africa's going to get a demographic dividend or a demographic disaster, it's going to be the young people who suffer or benefit from it. So they should be part of the conversation. And they should also tell us what they think they need and what they actually need, in terms of 21st century life skills, in terms of the kind of support that they're looking for from policymakers, from business, from religious leaders, etc. We need to know what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, their aspirations and their concerns if we are to design the appropriate policies for them to maximize their potential. I think across the world there is a real sense that education may not always lead to employment anymore. And I think education in and of itself is an individual and a public good. That people are knowledgeable and that they know their rights and have possibilities to learn and grow is something that no one denies. But part of the educative system is to prepare young people and children to live a life where they're economically productive and independent. And if that is not possible through the school system, then what then happens is that those young people leave education without the skills they need to be able to support themselves in the future. And we know that artificial intelligence and automation are going to be key challenges for all youth around the world, but especially those youth in developing countries who have a weak education. And what we really need is to prepare Africa's children and youth to have the best possible chance of employment. And that means having a very strong educational system. What we saw in Asia when many of those countries began their own demographic quest was that they prioritized investment in education, and particular investment in education for output, for production, to get jobs. That was the model that Korea and China and Thailand and others used. And that was very successful because it linked skills to labor demand. It's really important for that to happen in Africa. Africa will have many, many possibilities. Entrepreneurial, big firms, small enterprises, mom and pop shops, all kinds of mixed enterprises. But Africa's children and youth need to have the skills to be able to take advantage of that. Similarly, business needs to be able to get involved in the conversation, be able to express the needs of what it will need for the 21st century labor market. And education systems need to up their quality in Africa and elsewhere. It's very clear that even though more and more kids have access to school, that the learning outcomes are not as desired in many situations. So one of the key challenges is to improve quality. One of the things the report looks at is classroom size. How many kids are actually in the classroom? And that's where we put strong figures on the number of teachers that are needed additionally to put class sizes at a ratio that gives children the optimum ability to learn. I think the first one is be aware. Know what's going on. Know what's going on in your age group and your cohort. One of the big things of this generation 2030 is to say it's your generation. It's going to be the generation when you change from being a child to an adult, and what will happen to the world in that time? What's happening in your continent? And if you think that a lot of politics and economics and trade is happening by continent nowadays, and there is a real feeling in Africa and Asia of a continental identity, then the report really focuses on what is going to happen. It challenges young people to find out about what's happening in your demographic transition, what's happening in your social and economic space. The second thing it does is it challenges them to get engaged, to support the policy recommendations the report makes, but to also make their own and to unpack some of those solutions. And third, to lend their voice. Really, the voice of half of any continent is powerful. If African youth get involved and stay engaged in the quest to make the generation 2030 demographic dividend happen, then they will then be able to encourage and hold their leaders accountable. They'll be able to encourage and dialogue with business leaders and religious leaders. They'll be able to speak with academics like the people here at SIA and get them to be able to look at the kinds of challenges that young people want to from the young person's perspective. And finally, they'll be able to use their entrepreneurship, their use, their skill, their ingenuity to propose new and potentially better solutions to reap the demographic dividend deeper and faster.